feels good to beat y'all. Can't beat y'all.
What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to another episode of the Beats Per Minute podcast, where hip hop, health, and matters of the heart are all in sync. Today, I am super excited to be joined by a legend. We are showing some Cali love today with my new friend, DJ Cli-N-Tel from the legendary Wreckin Crew. What's going on, Cli-N-Tel?
Yes, what's up? What's up? What's up? How you doing? What's up, everybody?
I am good. I am good. How's everything there?
I mean, it's sunny Southern California. I can't complain. It's surfing sun and good weather and good times. So it's all good. It's all good.
Must be nice. Must be nice.
Hey,
Here in Florida, we are now in that season that it likes to rain when it feels like it. Just out of the blue, it just pop out and then just be hot for no reason. So that's what
you
we
got you
dealing with.
got schizophrenic weather, huh?
That is exactly.
Yeah,
I
that's
want to
wild.
you so much for joining me tonight, and thank you for coming on the BPM podcast. And before we get deep in the conversation, I want to give a huge shout out to Scott, aka Prez, for connecting us. He had told me that you were someone I definitely would love to talk to. And he was not lying at all. Just from our previous conversation, I was like, I wanted to hear more. I didn't want to hang up.
No, that's my
So
peoples, man. Yeah, shout out
uh,
to Prez Scott, and the
the
whole,
entire music
Murder Master
show.
Music Show.
Yeah. All right. So let's go back real quick before we dive into this conversation. Where everybody's in full swing of celebrating the 50 years of hip hop. And, we're seeing the different tributes and different shows and all that stuff. But as someone that grew up in New Jersey, I also spent a lot of time in LA. Our dad actually was a caddy at the Beverly Hills Country Club. So we would go back and forth a lot of times between, Jersey and LA. So talk to me about what was it like when hip hop actually reached the West Coast? Like, what was that like? Like, what was your first song you heard? What bit you to make you want to join into this new culture?
Yeah, so I actually, believe it or not, I started off as a child actor.
Mhm.
Um, and actually, the story goes that, one day I was junior high school, Vanguard Junior High School in Compton, and I was walking up the hallway, and my English teacher, Miss L. Brown, she approached me. She said, "Hey, Hawkins, come here." I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, I want you to, meet me after school because I want to talk to you about something." I was like, "Oh yeah," and she was cute too, so I had a little crush on her. So, I showed up after school and it was like 30 other students in the room. I was like, oh man. So she handed me this little booklet. It was a script. And she said, yeah, sit right here. And this is the part I want you to read. When you get to that part, you just read everything, from that part. So we went through it, we read
Mhm.
it. And so she said, yeah, take this home and let me know what you think about it. Come back on Monday and tell me if you're interested.
Mhm.
So I took it home. I read it through. What she didn't know was at the time I had a photogenic memory. I could look at something once or twice, and then boom, I had it down. So came back on that Monday. I recited all the lines. She was impressed. She's like, "Wow, that's amazing. You memorized all of that." Now actors know I memorized it, but I didn't learn the lines yet.
Mhm.
So eventually, she cast me in the play. We took it first to the school. We did it there. People loved it. Then we took it citywide and I actually ended up winning a best supporting actor trophy in the citywide
Wow.
competition in Compton. So from that point, I was bitten by the bug. I'm like, yeah, this is cool, So I had my mother, give me headshots and she started taking me out on auditions and everything. But it was hard for her because a single mother, 4 or 5 kids, lugging me around at different auditions and trying to deal with all that. I'm like, Moms, don't worry about that. It's cool. So one day we were on the soccer field at Vanguard, and a car pulled up and bust a right turn, but it was blasting this music. Now we heard the music before, but it was some dude rapping over the beat. So we froze and we were like, what is that? And the song was like, I said, a hip hop, a hippie to the hip, a hip hop. So I ran to the record store after school and I asked the lady, I said, yo, I heard this song. It was Good Times, but it wasn't Good Times. It was this dude rapping over the beat. What was that? She said, oh, I got this right here. This it's called Rapper's Delight. It's a rap song. So I took that bad boy home, listened to it a couple of times. Boom, I had to rap down. I was like, yeah, I want to do this now. This is my thing. So I started performing, started rapping. I recruited my cousin, and my best friend at the time. His name was Midnight, may he rest. And so we started doing competitions. We started, going around and, Watts, Compton, LA, and just everywhere we could, to perform. And started to really, cut our teeth and we made a little name. I got approached by Disco Daddy one day. And he's like, yeah, you kids, y'all got something, man. How old are you? I said, well, I'm 14, he 13, he 14. It's like, man, y'all got to keep going, with this stuff. Y'all got something. So started doing that. And eventually I hooked up with a buddy of mine named Joe Cooley. And we started a DJ crew called the Invasion Force, right? Kind of patterned after, Soul Sonic Force and all of that. And so we started doing DJ gigs and all of that. In Compton, and finally, eventually, and we're still in high school, so we started our own production company, and we started, kind of doing some things. I became a battle rapper, and I just started going around, jumping in ciphers anywhere I can get, some competition and just battling different people. I was using my photogenic memory. I would take somebody else's rap, and rap their rap, but I would switch it all around, change it, and they get mad at me. Man, why are you doing that? So that was fun. But then eventually one day we would go to this club called the Eve After Dark in Compton. It's a club where these local DJs were. And at the time, the DJs were just called Disco Construction Productions and the Wrecking Crew. And so one weekend, Disco Lonzo at the time was the manager of the club. He had announced, well, yeah, we having this rap contest. Come on up, bring your best rhymes. Next week is $100 contest. Come on, win $100. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I hooked up with a buddy of mine named McKinley, and we would do this routine together sometimes. So we got it together and fixed the routine up and had it down pat. It was dope. Like, yeah, we're gonna win this contest. So the day of the contest, he calls me up like, man, I can't make it, man. Mom's just tripping. I can't, I'm like, man, we worked on this routine all week, man. So he's like, man, don't worry about it. Just do one of them shits you do with Joe Cooley, when when y'all, when you're doing your thing at the parties and stuff. Cause, I was like, I would get on the microphone. Joe would get on the turntables and we would entertain the crowd at our, DJ parties. So I was like, all right, man. So I went up, and what I noticed was, that all the other MCs, they were talking about themselves, rapping about their cars and their clothes and what they had and all, even though they didn't have nothing, they were all broke, but they were rapping about this stuff. I was like, wait a minute, that's not hip hop. They're not engaging the crowd. I had kind of really patterned myself quite a bit after New York rappers. I'd educated myself on the East Coast scene, quite a bit. So my style and everything else that I was rocking with was more of an East Coast flavor anyway. So I understood the elements of hip hop. I was really deep into it. So when I got up, I did my thing, boom, got the crowd involved, all the call and response stuff, and I won the contest. So, it was one of them 8 Mile moments. Lonzo held up my hand. Hey, this is the winner right here. I'm like, hey, that's cool, but where's my $100 at? So he was like, yo, man, listen, I want to talk to you. Come back this Wednesday, through the week. You write your own stuff? Yeah, man. You rap your own stuff? Yeah, man. So I came back and I sat down with him, and we talked for about maybe 30 minutes, an hour. And he's like, yeah, man, I've been looking for somebody like you. I'm going to be making records now. I didn't know the first thing about making records. We only had one cat in the neighborhood that I even knew that ever even made like a novelty record shaped like a football. And he only maybe sold 30 copies of that. So I didn't know the first thing about the music industry or any of that kind of stuff. Lonzo, what he was talking sounded like, the Charlie Brown adult characters, womp, 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 womp. And so eventually, he paid me my money and I walked out. But as I was walking out, I noticed this dude that was on the turntables who was a friend of mine from junior high school. I said, "Oh, that's Dre," but we hadn't seen him in a while. He like one day he was there, and then next day he like disappeared, And so I'm like, "Oh, that's Dre. I ain't seen him in a while." So he was up there practicing, and so I'm like, "Well, if he's in it, then it might be something cool." So I went talked to my guys, Joe and the rest of the crew that I was with. They're like, "Man, we about to break this crew up anyway, man. You about to go off to college." Nick got some things he got to do. Carlos got some things he got to do. So you got our blessings, basically. So I went back, joined the Wrecking Crew. Come to find out that Dre and I actually had joined the crew that same week, because he had actually snuck in there to practice on the turntables, and I was in there to meet with Lonzo. So it just kind of happened that way. But once that happened, I started, DJing at the club and being the premier MC for Eve After Dark, and eventually we cut our first record called Slice. That was a record by me and DJ Yella. Yella had actually learned how to scratch by getting a tutorial from Davey D, who was Curtis Blow's DJ. And we befriended Curtis. Russell Simmons would come through. We saw Run DMC, up there at the club. All the acts would come there, from East Coast and all over to perform. So that's why we were able to see him like right there. And I was always taking notes, as an MC, as a DJ. I always wanted to get better. But like I said, initially, that's how I got started. And initially I patterned my style really after a lot of the, the East Coast acts, the Houdinis, Jimmy Spicer, Curtis Blow. But the one person I always wanted to battle, never got a chance to, was Run DMC. I always thought DMX was dope, as an MC, but I always wanted to battle Run. I'm like, yeah, I could take this dude down.
So you said something, and I was wondering about this because, of course, in your group, it's you, it's DJ Yella, it's
Yes.
Dr. Dre. You guys are all DJs. So how did that work? Like when you guys first kind of formed, the World Class Wreckin Crew, was it strictly going to be a DJ kind of crew, or was it always just with the mindset, like, because, you guys also could rap, that, you guys would be doing a little bit of both? Or what was even the thought process going into creating the group in the first place?
So initially, the Wrecking Crew was just a DJ crew before I joined. They had another side of it called Disco Construction Productions. That was the production company that rented equipment, that would do parties, and all of that. So that was like the production side. The DJ crew, strictly DJ crew, was the Wrecking Crew. When I joined, we then became the World Class Wreckin Crew because we now had a rapper, for the group, which was me. And then we had, the two DJs. Initially, it was supposed to be myself, Dre, and Yella as the folks that you would see on stage, right?
Gotcha.
Performing. Lonzo was the manager, and he sort of handled the independent record label stuff. But as we started to get popular and much more attention from the ladies, Lonzo's like, yo, I'm putting myself in the group. I ain't gonna sit back and let y'all, get all this love and attention, and I don't get some of that sprinkled on me. So he put himself in the group, and he's older than us. So what are we gonna say? Nah, man, it was his club, his concept. So he was like, all right, we just gonna have to make sure that you can carry your weight. But Yella was a dope DJ. Dre was a dope DJ. I was both a DJ and an MC. And so I would write the raps for everybody. And I taught Dre how to rap. And Yella finally eventually came out of his shell because he was really shy too. All three of us were, it's funny because all three of us were pretty introverted, as cats. I would get into character when I got on stage because I knew how to act. So I would use my acting skills to sort of create this persona of DJ Cli-N-Tel or MC Cli-N-Tel on stage. But off stage, very reserved, very introverted. Dre, very reserved, introverted. Yella, same thing. But when we worked together and when we got on stage, it was like something just clicked, like a whole nother level, popped in and it made, for a really cool situation. I wish that more of those performances were recorded and taped and filmed because people really see the real evolution of
Mm-hmm.
a wrecking crew, a world class wrecking crew, going from that to eventually evolving into NWA. There was nothing that NWA really did stage wise, performance wise, and I know we'll get into this in a moment, that wrecking crew hadn't sort of created at first. In fact, Cube was a protege of mine when he first came into the game with his friend Sir Jinx, who was Dre's cousin. That's the link. That's the DNA connection. Jinx is Dre's cousin. Jinx had a crew called CIA, and they wanted to rap. They were little kids to us, They were like, our younger brothers, and they were always bugging us. Yeah, we want to rap. We want to rap. Come on, man, put a song, put a song. And so finally, we did go over to a barbecue, a birthday party, and Cube jumped on the mic, KD jumped on the mic, and then Jinx got on the turntables. It was pretty much a setup.
Mm-hmm.
But they rocked, and I pulled Dre to the side and said, "Yo, man, we got to work with these kids, man. They the truth. This dude right here, he got something." Talking about Cube,
Mm-hmm.
and so eventually Dre was reluctant at first, but eventually I convinced him, and then we pulled him in and started working with him in our little, makeshift pre-production studio. And they opened for us. We would, I mentored them on stage, gave them, pointers and tips on how to rock the stage, how to balance it, how to do their thing, on the microphone, what to do as far as, studio protocols and all of that stuff that we learned, I passed it on. But just going back, Wrecking Crew was initially a DJ crew. And then once I joined, we became a performance group.
And it seemed like during that time that was a lot of people don't realize that was a thing, because that was actually how my brother got started and even became a part of the Ghetto Boys. When he first moved to Houston, he got down with a DJ crew called the Def 4, but that was become their name. And so it was a tape that they made is what he used as his like demo, James Prince, and how he got into the Ghetto Boys, and then the Def 4 actually became an act for Rap a Lot as well. And so it was it was such a big thing back then, just having the DJs do their thing. So a lot of
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't know that the DJ was the thing at the time. It was the
people.
most important aspect or element of hip hop, if you will. It wasn't the MC yet. It wasn't, the B-boys and the B-girls and the breakdancing and all of that. It wasn't even the graffiti art. The DJ drove everything. The DJ was
Mhm,
the center
mhm,
of attention. And because the DJ was the one keeping, the party going. The
mhm,
MC would just come in to enhance what the DJ was doing, and the MC would just kind of piggyback off of or ride off what the DJ's spirit was, right? That DJ's energy. It wasn't until rap became an actual or hip hop music and rap industry became more or less lucrative that the MC became like the focal point. But at parties, who got all the prime spots, who got the girls, who got, everything. It was the DJ. So we all wanted to be DJs at the time, not MCs, but it just so happens that I loved rap so much that I wanted to do both,
gotcha.
and I figured I could be good at both.
So while you guys are doing your thing and you're doing shows, um, take me back to what that felt like out in the West Coast. I know we kind of talked about it a little bit before, but just even thinking about like with the Get Down, it kind of showed that era of when you're going from disco to rap music coming on the scene, kind of the pushback that a lot of the first generation artists might have been getting from the clubs and and the DJs that were primarily disco DJs. But what was it even like, even when you start going on the road and you're doing shows, just dealing with artists from other genres? Were y'all being
Yeah.
accepted?
Well, it's funny because, 50 years later, here we are because rap was supposed to be in and out in 2 years. Um, People looked at it as novelty. A lot of the quote unquote musicians said that we weren't real musicians. They resented a lot of what we were doing. They said that we were stealing their music because we were sampling or scratching or mixing their music within blending into our music. Um, when we would go on tour, a lot of times, the audiences even didn't understand, even just like visually, what we were doing. So that's why with Wrecking Crew, we elected to sort of, blend our look, and sort of understand that okay, we're the only rap act on this tour, or we're the only rap, group for the most part that's at this gig. So we're gonna have to sort of cater our style a little bit more visually to what this audience's expectations are. So we had to do that to blend that. We also incorporated, R&B into our sets and into our songs because we knew that we had to sort of have be that bridge and transition there. What people didn't realize, though, or at least what these quote unquote real musicians didn't realize, was that we all had musical backgrounds. Yella was a drummer. He was a drummer in high school. My grandfather was best friends with Jimi Hendrix, and that DNA was in me always. I sang in, of course, the church choir, sang in the school choir, play guitar, play keyboards, play the drums. Dre has a phenomenal musical ear, so we all had music in us. We weren't just DJs. We weren't just quote unquote rappers. We could write, we could create music and whatnot. The stuff you hear from us, that's all us. That's nobody else, coming and telling us what to play and how to play it. That music, came from us. So we kind of resented that a lot of times, but yeah, we did. We knew that we were, sort of like the tip of the spear. We knew we were going to get the headwinds, and we just persevered. We kept going with it because we believed in hip hop. We believed in the culture. We believed in, the freshness of it and what we were doing, in terms of like our style. We grew up on our parents' music and our parents' music. And we respected that. We appreciated that, but we also knew that we ourselves were creating something that was new. Now we didn't know that it was going to last 50 plus years.
Right.
We didn't even expect that ourselves, but we just knew that it was something we loved, and that we was just going to give 110% no matter what. But when we toured, yeah, a lot of times we did get that blowback from some of the so-called musicians. We did get blowback from radio, or radio looked at it as kind of like a joke. A lot of times they just knew that the kids thought that it was popular. The kids thought that it was popular. The kids liked it, but they just kind of in the corner kikiing and chi-chiing about it. But then again, as the tide started to turn, you could see that they started to take us a lot more serious, and realize that rap is here to stay.
Do you think it's that they really started taking it serious, or they just saw how lucrative it was, and so it was like, okay, well, we want to, grab a hold of this to kind of help push, our agenda, if you will? Because it just seemed at one point, all of a sudden you start hearing little by little them, bringing in like, MC to do like a little something on a song or whatever, or like even in the movies now all of a sudden like you had, the kids or somebody kind of like acting in the fashion of like, a rapper or something, and it was just always like it was weird watching it progress into what it's
Yeah, well, a couple of things. One, youth culture drives the entertainment industry. So I think they started to realize that rap wasn't going anywhere when, two and three generations, that had progressed, it was still strong. The other piece is they finally realized, as some of the previous generation musicians started to realize, yo, wait a minute, they're introducing our music to a whole new generation of people, and we're starting to get demands to tour again. We're starting to get, demands to be on records again. People are a whole new generation of folks are starting to, know who we are again. So maybe we had this thing all wrong. Maybe we had these guys all wrong. And so, yes, let's bring them in and start collaborating with them as opposed to trying to, mute them or sue them for introducing our music to a whole new generation of people. So yeah, it was a combination of things. Our perseverance as a culture, as a hip hop culture, the fact that it tapped into and resonated with young people, the fact that the rap industry had the ability to morph itself and catch a new, generation or a new iteration of people every like 4 or 5 years, and the fact that it was introducing this music to a whole new group of folks who had never heard it or who didn't know what that previous music was. I think it was a combination of all of those things, and yeah, absolutely lucrative, and it became a serious money making venture in a multi-billion-dollar industry or part of the music industry.
Yeah. So just going back a little bit, at some point you made the decision, to leave the group.
Mhm.
What made you decide to do that, and then what did you, do, from that point?
Well, a couple things. One, there were not creative differences. That was never the issue. When me and Dre and Yella, got together to create stuff, it was almost like we had a hive mind. There was such a synergy there because we understood each other. We understood each other's background. We understood. It was almost like we the three of us spoke our own, separate language, irrespective of other folks. So our group, we were very close, very tight, like brothers. But it was more about business and finances because as we were selling records on the radio, doing well, we even had songs that were placed on TV shows.
Mhm.
And so all of that was happening, but I had taken a leave of absence from a job that I'd had at the time. I had just started, my first year of college when we started popping. And Dre was kind of still, bumming rides from people. Yella was a kept man. He had an older woman. He tells all this in his book, so I'm not snitching. Um, so anyway, he was a kept man. He had an older lady who was basically footing all his bills, paying for a rental car for him. And we're like, yo, wait a minute. We're on the radio. We got songs on TV. We're touring, but we still broke. And so we're like, wait a minute, this is not adding up. And of course, Lonzo, being naive to the business, because again, even though he managed the club and all of that, he was still
So,
relatively young himself, still in his 30s, and not really knowing that much about the business himself. We were all getting taken for a proverbial ride financially. And so we tried to come to some agreements, or at least I tried to come to some agreements on that, in terms of ownership, label ownership of Crew Cut, in terms of just where the money was going, and because I was looking at the accounting, I would check, the accounting sheets every week. I would check the sales, and all of that all the time. Yella and Dre were too busy partying and having fun and chasing, what, to really get into that part of it. But I was always concerned about that. And Lonzo and I would sit down and go over that kind of stuff. And I'm like, man, something's not adding up. And so I brought it to their attention. They agreed at first. And in fact, here's what people don't know. We all left the Wrecking Crew. We all quit. Both me, Dre, Yella, and myself. We all left. We were actually scheduled to go on this tour at the time. And the tour bus was sitting outside waiting for us. And we basically boycotted. And so Lonzo was calling us like crazy, like for a whole week. I think they ended up at a party or something, or a birthday party. And the person who was giving the birthday party called Lonzo and said, "Yo, they're here." And he hurried up over, pulled him in the car, talked to them like, "Yo, man, listen, whatever he said to him." They called me up and said, "Hey, man, we decided that we want to go back." So, all right, I said, fine. So I went back, gave it one more shot. And some of the things that were said, I just couldn't agree with. And so I decided at that point to move on and go solo and do my own thing. And again, it had nothing to do with creative differences, nothing to do whatsoever with Dre and Yella. It was more about a business, dispute between myself and Lonzo. I eventually ended up suing and winning the lawsuit. And then, moving on from there. But, the funny part about it is, life comes full circle. Lonzo and I are the best of friends today. Years ago, we sat down and squashed all that crap and had, a real heart to heart, man to man talk. And we were able to see, both sides and understand where everybody was coming from, in that circumstance. And, we've, like I said, moved on. And I've actually, coming down to money, I've actually made more money with Lonzo since then and us working together than not. So that was just, like I said, I look at it as a minor, speed bump and a life learning lesson that other people can learn from, as well. Is that really it's more about, talking things out, trying to see each other's piece in it. And nobody was mad. We didn't go into any kind of, "I'm gonna get you up." It was none of that kind of stuff. It was just a mutual parting of the ways, like two continents slowly separating. But like I said, we've since, for years now been working together since really the 90s, and things have been cool.
Good. That's good to hear because, a lot of times you hear those stories or especially when you're in the industry, we saw how, misunderstandings can become something blown out of, proportion and then it becomes a sides thing and just causes a whole lot of chaos that a lot of times doesn't need to be there. So, it's always good to hear when, two men can, just be on their grown men stuff and, sit down and have that conversation and be able to just, move forward because,
Oh, absolutely.
that's, that's what allows us to know the history is by making sure that everybody is included in the conversation. And a lot of
Absolutely, man. And and there were other forces, involved too. We had, shady managers, folks, coming from all sides because it's a whole different groove when the popularity starts to grow, the recognition and the notoriety starts to grow. And I know I'm preaching to the choir with you and the experience you've had with your brother, but there has to be a level of resolve and resiliency, involved in it because the industry itself you get bombarded, with all kind of things, certain expectations, good and bad. And it takes a very strong-willed individual to be able to be ready for it and to be able to deal with it. And a lot of times you can't mentally prepare for it. You just have to have something deep inside of you to be able to resolve. People only see the glamorous side, the red carpet stuff, the glitz, but they don't see the ugly, dirty, deep, musty, muddy, murky stuff that, a lot of times you have to deal with. And I think because for the most part, I was just a nerdy street kid that, I was able to sort of blend all those skills together to be able to
Mm-hmm.
deal with that and sustain a career.
Gotcha. So going back to what was a very iconic place in my mind, Eve's After Dark. We all saw during the Super Bowl when Dre, performed and, had that whole, setup that kind of all took us back to, LA. What was that like for you, being someone that came from that era, knows what that means, to the city? Like, what was that like for you to see, like certain places displayed and, and even, just going through the years of seeing what has become of West Coast hip hop and seeing it grow and go the way that it is going. How does that make you feel, or your thoughts on it now, where it is now?
Well, yeah, well, first off, all those places that he put up. I mean, we had rumors or sort of fore uh, foregoing information that that was going to happen or something like that was going to happen. But to see it up there on display in front of hundreds of millions of people, it took me back to a place of nostalgia. It was for me sort of bittersweet because I love the fact that he paid tribute to the place where we sort of really cut our teeth and got started, and it was a safe zone for a lot of us
Mm-hmm.
teenagers back then. Even after dark, because what people don't know is that whether you were Crip, Blood, or in between or nothing, everybody showed up there. And
Mm-hmm.
that was a neutral zone. That was a place where you knew, okay, this is a spot where we don't mess up. We don't start, the goofy stuff. We don't, hold the grudges. We don't bring all that stuff into the space, because this is our neutral zone, safe space, and the place where, we can party and we can get out and have fun and go home and everybody be safe.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first thing there, and that's how important and significant the club was. I mean, listen, anytime somebody did try to step out of line, rest assured, we're gonna jump off those turntables and put a boot in you, and that's how it was. I know people say, yeah, they're in the purple suits and all that, but trust me, uh, you can find some folks online that will admit, yeah, I went up there, man, and try to get down, and the wrecking crew, they put a boot in my ass and kicked me out of there. We did that, because like I said again, we were from the streets too, but at the same time, we understood the significance of that club and how important it was to all the kids in the neighborhood. So just seeing that, at the Super Bowl, seeing Tam's Burgers, a place where we would eat at, we would pull up into after doing a gig or whatever, to see the barbershop that we would get our hair cut at downstairs from the club. Just, him doing that was really a thumbs up and an acknowledgement of the culture that we created and that we grew up in
Mm-hmm.
there. So I was proud of him, proud to see that. And, a part of all of us, was in there. I called up one of my friends and he's like, yeah, man, you see Dre up there, doing his thing. And he showed Tams, he showed Eve After Dark. I said, man, that's all of us. You know what I'm saying? That's dude, that's everybody. That's you, that's me, that's everybody that used to come to the club. Because the reason why we would rock so hard and try to represent is because we had to represent for the people in the neighborhood, because we knew that, okay, this person didn't make it out the neighborhood, this person is in jail, this person, didn't make it. So we have to represent that for everybody. And that's what it meant, for me. And just in terms of, the various stages and the evolution of hip hop, and you look at like all the people, that have come from that area, and then all the branches and the tentacles that, the World Class Wreckin Crew has had, and just the family tree. Some folks get mad when we leave them out, I mean, all the way from course, starting with us, and then, Cube and, of course, Ruthless Records and NWA, then, branching off into 50 and Eminem and, Kendrick and, Quick and Battle Cat and Snoop. I mean, it's Dog Pound. It just goes on and on and on. And to know that, listen, this started from a spark, from an idea, from a group of guys who, A, just first wanted to be DJs, and then two, wanted to make records and make the records on our own, footing the bill ourselves, raising the money ourselves, figuring out how to get it pressed up, figuring out how to get it distributed, figuring out how to get it on the radio, just doing that. But it wasn't like, it was easy and it just all fell into place. We had to work our asses off to make it work. We had to be smart. We had to think of stuff. We had to, sometimes compromise on strategy, because how do you get something on the radio at the time when people first don't even understand what we're doing, and two, don't necessarily rock with it. And luckily we had a guy in Greg Mack who was like opening up his bedroom window and hearing the music in the streets, but wasn't hearing that same music on the radio. And he's like, wait a minute, something's not matching here. Something's not right. I hear this music on the streets. I'm riding up and down the block. Cars are bumping it, but we're not playing it on the radio. I got to fix that. And so all of those sort of things came together around the same time to really make this thing happen. The Uncle Jam's Army, group, who were our crosstown rivalries, who pushed us to be better, and we pushed them to be better. Greg Mack believing in hip hop music and turning K-Day literally into, an all hip hop station. The other crews that were around, like Ultra Wave, Knights of the Sound Table, Tony Gonzalez, Julio G, Ralph M, the Mix Masters, of course, so just creating that atmosphere and that the number of years of time that it took to kind of have all of these things sort of connect together, because, we all knew each other and we all would look over in each other's backyards, trying to see what each other was doing to make it better. The LA Dream Team was another crew, was probably one of the first that I know of that actually started gigging at like Magic Mountain, and that opened up doors for other, crews to come in there and start doing stuff. Because again, people didn't understand what hip hop was. Like, what is this stuff? What are they doing? I don't know, but I know my daughter and my son like it. So maybe I could, take a look at it and see what it is. And just eventually working hard enough to making the music quality enough to convince people to believe in it. And that's really sort of like what I see as sort of like the really cool evolution of the culture. And now it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. We have billionaires now in hip hop, guys that I still know that at one point, were, running around with bubblegum shoes on. But to see it now, to see them, progressing like that and being, at that level is really cool.
A lot of times when people think of West Coast hip hop, they started at NWA instead of going back. And so it was kind of funny. I think it was when the Breakfast Club was interviewing Vince, and he was talking about, different artists that came before, during that time that you got on. And I think that, like, when people listen to the original music that was being put out by, like, your group, even the first song Ice-T put out, like, it had more of what they want to call a techno beat, but was it like electro is what you guys were calling it back then? But it was specifically because, like, during that era, that's when you had the pop and lock, so it was for people to dance to, and that was what kind of was out. And now coming, like you said, we're now at this 50th year. What do you see kind of even happening in your city to actually celebrate, you know, original groups that got this thing started to become what it has become in the city?
I mean, there are so many activations, going on right now, all the way East Coast, West Coast, South, Midwest, everywhere, to celebrate the 50th anniversary of hip hop. August 11th, 1973, 1520 Sedgwick, where Kool Herc and Cindy, did that gig that really, kicked things off. Obviously, we know that there are elements of hip hop already before that, both on the East and West Coast. I mean, in '69, you had the first album, I believe, to use the word rap in it was the Watts Prophets with Rapping in Black in a White World. You had also in '69 with Don Campbell and the Campbell Lockers, doing the locking and the popping on the West Coast. But and you had DJ Hollywood and WBLS doing their thing on the East Coast. So the elements were already there, right, for the culture. It's just that they started to come together and blend together and sort of fuse together in a
Mm-hmm.
way that we could define this thing now as a culture. On the West Coast, there is connective tissue and DNA from the East Coast. Disco Daddy, he's one of the first in '81 rappers with Captain Rap to get out and make a record, with him, off of a Rick James give off of that Rick James "Give It to Me, Baby" song. And then there was also in '81 you had a cat by the name of Motorcycle Mike up in Oakland who made a song called the it was the Rat song. And then you had Tally Ho at the Party with Steve Walker, So in '81, that was a pivotal year. Then you had the Rappers Rap Group. In '81, that was a pivotal year. West Coast hip hop. The folks that I came up with, we started looking at that and saying, hey, you know what? If they can do it, then we can do it too. So I guess in appreciating, sort of like where things were and who came before and sort of patterning, creating a pattern and sort of breadcrumbs, we can appreciate what they were doing initially. When you talk about our style, our very first song, meaning World Class Wreckin Crew's very first song, was an East Coast style song. It was a slower beat. It was, a break beat that we had used. And we did it. That record was called Slice. But
Mm-hmm.
when this new dance came along called The Freak, and people would get on the floor and basically dry hump on the floor, what we rationalized was that, well, if we speed the music up and this dance is there and people are dry humping, you can get more humps in with a faster beat. So we started creating faster music that was a blend of funk from, George Clinton and Parliament and Cameo and Rick James and Earth, Wind and Fire and all those groups, because those are groups we love. But then also we wanted to add in the electro elements from Kraftwerk, groups like that, ABC, um, the Eurythmics, Annie Lennox. So we kind of had a mixture because, we were also influenced by, synth pop too as well. Growing up in high school, like I said, I went to Gardena High School, which was just a hop, skip, and a jump over from Compton. Yella went to Compton High. Lonzo went to Gardena, and I think he eventually ended up at I think at Centennial. Dre went to Centennial High. So we kind of had those influences in high school as well. But mainly that electro funk pretty much came. We didn't call it that. We didn't even have a name for it, really. We just, called it rap, hip hop,
Yeah.
like everybody else. But we were creating a sound that was blended on, funk, synth pop, sort of even some influences from Detroit, because the Unknown DJ, who was also a member at one time of the Wrecking Crew, but he left before we started making records. Um, he was also sort of a mentor, for us, and eventually he got into, him coming from Detroit, he knew about go-go music, he knew about, Juan Atkins and all of that. So that was sort of like our influence as well. Then we had another guy who really doesn't get the recognition and mention that he really deserves, is Andre Bolden, also known as L.A. Dre.
Mm-hmm.
And L.A. Dre came back later to do a lot of songs with Dre on, the Michelet song, of course, Something's in My Heart, and Nicey, and all those songs that Michelet did. But we were just really, really looking for our own style and searching for our own category, to fit in. And what other people don't know, you had mentioned NWA, is that, NWA really wasn't the first to do reality rap. Of course, Parkside Killers was one of the first, there, but then Ice-T came with, 6 in the Morning.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the NWA DNA, Wrecking Crew, we did a song on our album called Gang Bang You Dead, because we had already started to recognize the change in our society, in our community, from going, 95% civilian and only 5% gangbangers, with the bubblegum, sneakers on, to 5% civilian and 95% everybody want to be a thug and a gangbanger. So we're like, yo, wait a minute, this is different. With the drug trade shifting over from East Coast to West Coast, that whole Iran Contra stuff was involved in that. One of the biggest drug dealers on the West Coast freeway, Ricky Ross, was operating at the time. So all of that stuff was happening and blending the culture to sort of shift the mentality from party, have a good time, surfing sun, ride around in your Jeep Cherokee with the top down, going up and down, Pacific Coast Highway, Venice Beach, Santa Monica Beach, whatever. So now this, I gotta go and get that bag, make that money, sell that crack, and draw those lines, draw the gang lines. So that was the shift, man.
Yeah. I often think about how crazy it was to me, like I said, going back and forth to LA when I was younger, and just remembering, the beauty and just the smells and the excitement for me whenever we would.
Palm trees. Yeah.
Exactly. And, going to Venice Beach and all of that. And then, I think the last time I was there was like mid to late 80s. So then, only experiencing it through TV, it was like, kind of what's going on, like
Yeah.
I never imagined that, there was like parts of LA that was like this or that would become like this. But then, I'm sitting here feeling the
Yeah.
same way in my hometown of Trenton. Trenton is way smaller, and never imagined that we would have, gangs and stuff in our city. So it's interesting, and
Well, that mandate, when that mandate came down to spread crack, cocaine throughout the country, it was more like a lot of cats who were, Crips and Bloods started moving into, other cities, both large and small, and then reorganizing and repurposing that whole, situation in other places. And then it became, relevant to do that, down in Houston, up in Detroit, and even, New York. 'Cause when I started hearing about like Crips and Bloods in New York, I'm like, what? How that happened? But
yeah,
knowing and understanding, because again, Wrecking Crew, the World Class Wrecking Crew wasn't just the 4 guys that you see on album covers, or Shakespeare and Lonzo and Dre and the other on album covers. It was a crew of 15, 20 other people behind us, because we were still a DJ crew. So we needed hands to move equipment, to go to, remotes, and we still rented out, equipment for other people to do their parties and stuff. So every time you moved equipment and every time we did a gig at like a Dudo's Music Center or a bigger hall, that was like moving a small apartment. So we needed other hands to help us out with that. And so all those other cats, some of them, they were Crips, they were Bloods, some of them were in other, crews and gangs. But they knew not to bring it obviously into the situation with us, because we were really selective about, who were part of our team.
Mm.
And you had to have something, about yourself if you were going to be a part of the Wrecking Crew's team. It wasn't an easy, thing to get into, so that's why the excellence is there, really. That's why you see people go, well, did NWA just drop out of the sky and dust themselves off and walk into music land? No, there was a a 5 to 8 year span of time where, they were, in the mix learning how to
Mm-hmm.
do, what they were doing. So by the time they became NWA, which by the way, I was asked to join, but I declined that. And again, that's neither here nor there. Like I said, those are my brothers. And the reason why I didn't join was because I was in college and I knew those professors, they weren't gonna put up with that, especially in the department that I was in. And B, I knew what sort of the thing that they were promoting, and I just couldn't, rock with that, knowing that I had friends that had been, who had, been killed through gang violence or incarcerated through gang violence. So I'm like, no, I can't really rock with that. Later on, me and Easy did get together and we did start working together. We did agree to, to work together, but he passed away. But going back to something you said, sort of like about what's going on now with the music. I think that the West Coast has matured, has evolved into an understanding of what it takes to not only be a star in music, but a superstar. That's where you get the Kendrick Lamars of the world and the Roddy Riches and the Game and some of the other folks who, for the most part, are standing on our shoulders and they're paying attention and they're listening and understanding, what the connective tissue is and what the DNA is to be able to have a sustainable career. Because for us, it really wasn't just about making music for the now, for the moment. It was really about how do we make music that is transcendent,
Right.
that expands into other areas. And when I flipped into working with Unknown over at Techno Hop, literally that was an agenda we had to blend the techno beats and hip hop. So,
Mm.
putting together songs like 2030, and helping Unknown with Facade, that group Facade and the X-Men, and then eventually bringing in DJ Slip and Dub C. It was all about blending. How do we blend, this techno sound with the hip hop music that we're doing? And it was just fun, man. It's just making the music fun. It's fun to see people dancing to your stuff, enjoying your stuff, connecting with folks. No rationale for it other than just helping people to have a good time, maybe forget about some of the troubles and problems and issues. And I took what I did in terms of the creative part serious, but I've never taken, the criticism or the praise serious. To me, it was just, it's always just been about, okay, how can I make the best music? Because I'm my own worst critic. How can I make the best music and collaborate with people and hopefully it'll resonate and connect with other people.
Gotcha. So this month in the medical world, we have different awarenesses. So this month, we focused on mental health awareness as well as stroke awareness. And as a Black man who has, seen a lot, done a lot, been through a lot, heard a lot, how do you keep yourself mentally healthy? Like, what have you
Um,
practiced to keep yourself mentally healthy?
One of the things I do try to emphasize, obviously, mental health is extremely important. Um, and it's just equally as important as physical health, and they really go together. I
Mhm.
believe in synergy. I believe the body is a system that seeks, homeostasis. In other words, the mind and the body and even the spirit, working together in tandem to maximize and to sustain life as long as possible.
Mhm.
I've had so many of my friends, so many people in the last few years aren't here. They didn't make it, whether it was through, COVID or whether it was through pre-existing, conditions,
Mhm.
heart attack, strokes, diabetes, you name it, it's hit them. For me, I try to watch what I eat. Um, I, I haven't eaten, and again, I'm not trying to tell people how to eat because I'm not sanctimonious like that. But I haven't eaten red meat since I was a teenager.
Mhm.
And for the most part, I stay away from. I don't personally drink, don't smoke. Um, I try to exercise as much as possible. And I try to, watch what I eat, how much of what I eat. I try to stay away from, fried foods with a lot of, uh, um, the bad fat, because there is good fat too as well.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
again, I educate myself in terms of nutrition, vegetables, of course, fruits. Um, eh, eh, like I said, exercising and just being aware of the body, just listening to the body. I know that sleep is a wellness commodity. Um, and just like I said, being intelligent about the moves that I make and hearing the experiences of other people. I just was talking to somebody just yesterday and they told me, said, man, 4 years ago I had a heart attack and this year I had a stroke. Um, and it's like, wow. And I know for us, you know, we have as in the culture, right? We have this youthful mentality,
Mhm.
and because this is what kept us going, for so long. And a lot of times for us, even back in the day, we would just go and go and go and go and to make things happen. And sometimes not eating right, sometimes eating, on the go, sometimes eating, not the most healthiest foods. And later in life, it can catch up, it
Mhm.
catches up to you. Your body start feeling a certain way and it's like, yo, what is this? Not realizing that, all the years of doing what we do, eventually, it catches up. So it's important to take care of the body, to take care of the mind, to exercise, to sustain and not be afraid when it comes to mental health issues. You're not weak if you go to therapy. It's not, you're not pussy if you talk to somebody about whatever your feelings are. If you're going through something, and you're feeling some type of way, reach out to
Mhm.
folks. I've had people, like I said, who've contemplated on living themselves, and it's like, yo, you have so much more worth in life. If you're feeling that way, there are hotlines you can talk to immediately. Um, and it's just, mental health is extremely important. And it's something that, like you say, we as a culture, as Black people in our culture, tend to look at as, oh, well, just get over it. It's not that simple, for certain folks. And sometimes it's in our DNA that, we seek additional help. And it's not a bad thing, to seek, mental health, help. And so we have to get over that stigma. We have to move past and beyond that and understand that, hey, if I break my arm, I need to go to the doctor to get it fixed. If I'm having some physical issue, I need to go to the doctor and get medication for that. Same thing with mental health. If there is something going on mentally that's broken and it needs to be fixed, reach out to the doctors or reach out and get professional help for that kind of stuff. So there should be no shame, whatsoever in that circumstance.
I think that, especially in our community, we definitely deal with the shame of, going to seek help or, whether we're depressed or anxious or whatever, because it and that was widely talked about, like in my generation, your generation, generations before us, but we're seeing more of the conversation. But then we also have the other piece of, health equity and people not being able to afford, health insurance. They, work hard and, that extra couple $100s that they might have taken out of their, pay could be, a couple extra dollars that cost them to, be out on the street. And so that's why, we are having these discussions because we want to, be able to educate and keep, amplifying the idea and the voices that are, trying to make it happen. So from the West Coast, have what's the thought process of regarding what some of the different artists that have came together to create the Hip Hop Alliance? Like, what's your thoughts on that, and what's your hopes for it?
Well, first I sit on the board of the Universal Hip Hop Museum, and then
Oh,
also, work with Curtis and Special Ed and Chuck and Chris Karras One on the Hip Hop Alliance, and it's important. And Corrupt is a member too, but it's important that we do understand that we are a community, we are a culture. We do have both. At least I like to think we have a responsibility to the culture and also the next generation, coming up to educate, to get them to understand their how significant and important they are and what their purpose is and what the purpose of the culture itself, is. On the West Coast, I would really like to see more unity.
mm,
I would like to see some of the grudges and hatchets being buried that have sustained over the years, because I think there's strength in coming together and working together versus being divided. Um, I know. I mean, I understand some of the beefs. I understand why they've taken place, but I think that we can a lot of times heal a lot of the wounds through understanding that we all have sort of like a unified purpose,
mm-hmm,
and a unified vision. And I think that's what a lot of times has sustained hip hop for so long, is us working together. But whatever the differences are, petty or otherwise, I would like to see folks, work through those differences and come to some, level of, mutual respect, for each other and understanding. Not to say that it doesn't exist, but there's a food chain, here on the West Coast, and there's a monetary food chain, there's a financial food chain, so to speak, and there's a cultural food chain. I would like to see those things kind of intersect and blend together. We have factions in hip hop on the West Coast that are grounded and rooted in furthering, the tenets of the culture. And then
mm-hmm,
we have the folks that are strictly in the rap industry who are about, the profit and profit driven, and that is their motive. If we can find a way to find a happy medium, we would have more diverse voices that could be a part of what drives, the culture out here a lot more. Everything from groups that involve Odd Future to the Dog Pound to cats like a Def Jeff, and Young MC, or the Tone Lokes of the world, and all of that. Seeing a blending of that with the generations, the gaps, closing those generational gaps. I would love to see that. I would love to see more of the OGs and the legends and the legacy artists, working side by side and in tandem and hand in hand with some of the newer artists coming up, the artists that, may not know the history or understand it. How can they respect it if they don't know it, right? So there needs to be more outreach, there. And I think that will solidify and strengthen us a lot more as a culture and allow for us to not be taken so much advantage of or just sort of whipped around like a rag doll by certain factions in the industry, not the whole industry, but certain factions in the industry who feel as if the artist is not as important or intelligent as they are. But they for a lot of times could be in for a rude awakening. I, for one, have a real serious pet peeve about anybody insulting my intelligence because otherwise they might reach in there and draw back a nub if they're not careful.
Yeah.
But other than that, man, that's what I would like to see, much more of, and I think there's strength in numbers.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time and for just chopping it up with me. I definitely appreciate it. Thank you for taking us back and for the history and just for sharing um, everything that you have done in the music industry and beyond, and truly appreciate you. And just let the people know, what are you up to now, and what do do you have anything coming up in the future, and how can they keep updated about whatever you might be doing soon?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. First of all, again, thank you for having me out here and chopping it up with you. It was fun, and I always enjoy chopping it up with people who love the culture and intelligent. Like I've always told you, I'm a big fan, of your brother's music and his contribution to the culture and hip hop and everything. So all love there, man. What am I doing now? So much. Of course, I'm a professor, at a college. I teach courses in hip hop, but also courses in media, courses in culture. Still rap, still doing things, still, got music out there. Of course, like I said, working with UGS for life, and Prez and Scott and those guys. Um, I have a few movie projects, that I'm producing that we're working on. Some in the animated feature space and others in the regular space. I still act. We have a movie that's out right now called He's for the Streets. It's streaming like #1 on Tubi. See what else, man. We got some some stuff that we're doing, concert stuff that we're going to be working on. We have a Hip Hop for Peace event coming up in June. And again, this may run after that, but so if it's running before that, then that's coming up in June of this year, 2023. If you missed it afterwards, you can probably go back on the internet and watch it. So we have several people coming out, for that event. And then this year also, 2023, there's some things coming up with the United Nations on the East Coast. What else? So we got that happening, and yeah, we'll just continue to do that. If people want to reach out to me, they can reach me at DJ _CLI_N_TEL on Instagram, or just type in my name, DJ Cli-N-Tel. It'll probably pop up. And again, I malappropriated Clientele to kind of put my own spin on it. Oh, and one thing I didn't tell you though is how I came up with the name, why I picked Clientele.
Yeah.
So the story goes that in business, when you go to a barbershop or a beauty salon or somewhere, and the people that you work with or you service, they're your clientele, right?
Mm-hmm.
They believe in you. They believe in your product. They believe in your skill set and your work ethic and what you're doing. So I said, well, you know what? If nobody believes in me, I'm going to believe in myself. Therefore, I'm going to be my own clientele. So that's how I came up with the name Clientele.
I love that. That's a great one. Thank you so much for sharing that one. That definitely that's dope.
believe in yourself always.
Oh, that's a great way to end it too. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you all for tuning in and joining us. For another episode. This is Beats Per Minute podcast. You can find us on all social media at beatsperminute.pod. We drop an episode every Thursday, and we do a live episode at the end of the month. So make sure to check us out. We have fun over here. Thank you again. Definitely appreciate you.
Salute.
Hello, little sister. How are you? Very proud of you and your accomplishments. Love you. Take care.